So I came across this picture the other day, 12 signs that you're an empath. And when we view this through the narcissist filter, it's an absolute catastrophe. I'd like to run you through these 12 traits and show you exactly how narcissists will be using these against you. The first one is having a frequent need for solitude. It's easy for a narcissist to exhaust by simply taking up too much time and too much space. Introverts are people who recharge on their own, as opposed to extroverts who are people who recharge in the company of others. If you are a person who recharges on your own, and the other person is being needy, is constantly around you, and constantly demands your attention, they exhaust you. When you're exhausted, the brain doesn't function properly, it's much harder to maintain boundaries, and much harder to stand up for yourself. Empath is a label in the same way as narcissist is a label. These labels are simply categories that are there to help us apprehend the world. It helps us try to match what we see to each label. Having the category of empath is helpful to a certain extent because we can see certain traits that are common, and maybe we wouldn't really see the parallels otherwise. However, in my observation, it is not helpful to identify with a label, otherwise we try enacting the label. Therefore, it's really important to understand that pretty much everything in life has got pros and has got cons. And if we understand what the pros and the cons are, we can make informed decisions. If we believe there are only pros and we don't see the cons, we are blinded and we are incredibly easy to manipulate. Number 2, always looking to help those in need. This is also a trap because when we have this mindset, it's easy to see someone and think, maybe I need to help that person, maybe that person needs help, but we forget to ask the question, maybe the other person doesn't want help, and maybe the other person is simply pretending that they need help so they can get attention from us. If we don't have the right filter, we're willing to give away our time and our energy to people whom we perceive to need help, but without really filtering. And we can even ask the question, how do we really help somebody? Is it by doing things for them, or is it by providing tools for them so they can be independent? It's important to avoid being manipulated by this, but also be aware of the tendency we might have of trying to have other people lean on us instead of become independent. Number 3, you're an excellent listener. Being an excellent listener means giving time, giving attention, giving energy to another person. If we believe the other person needs help, it's easy to do that. But of course, if we're listening, we're not alone. But if we are an introvert and we need time alone to recharge, but we're not having it because the other person needs to talk, they need to share their problems, we are getting exhausted. It's interesting to see how many people who need help actually disappear when we start using proper psychotherapeutic techniques to ask them questions so that they can take responsibility for their life. Not everyone who is complaining actually wants things to be better. And let me know in the comments what you think, which ones you recognize, and do you agree or disagree with the way I deconstruct these different traits? And I would also invite you to let me know what you thought of this by hitting the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and if you enjoy the content, subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. Number 4, you are very intuitive. This is typical of the fake dichotomy between being rational and being intuitive or being emotional. We can be more than simply one thing. When people believe they should be intuitive or they try to be more intuitive, but they don't use rationality, it's easy to be manipulated, to not see things as they really are or not want to see things that way. But also if we want to identify one way, such as being intuitive, it's easy for people to manipulate us. What makes much more sense is simply to accept that we have one part of intuition that is very valuable, another part of rationality that is also incredibly valuable, and when someone tries telling us how we should be or trying to make us be a way that is not natural, there's a possibility that they're manipulating us. With all of these points, as such, it's not really an issue. It is the excess of any of them that becomes a problem. All things in moderation, too much of anything, one way or the other, is a real problem. Number 5, internalizing other people's emotions. This can be helpful if you're working as a therapist, to have a sense of what another person is going through, but recognizing it is their emotion. It can be really tough for people to recognize, I'm feeling this, but it doesn't belong to me. If we are taking on board somebody else's emotion, it's not helping them, and it's simply making us suffer. If you see someone with a hand on a burning frying pan, and you start feeling pain for them, that doesn't change their pain. You feel pain for nothing. You don't actually know if they are feeling pain. Some people lie, and it's just making your life worse. Having this ability can be nice if we know how to limit it, because otherwise we're easy to manipulate. Number 6, having a strong belief in humanity. This can be misunderstood. A lot of people think it means that humans are good. This is a simplistic view. Reality is that humans have the choice between being good and giving into evil. A number of us choose good, and many people choose evil because it's easier. My belief in humanity is that humans are capable of choosing good if they want to, and I observe that quite often they do not want to. Especially the ones who claim that they do, they can be some of the worst human beings around. If we believe that all humans are good, we're completely blindsided to cluster B types, psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists, and they will take advantage of us, and we won't understand what is happening. Number 7, a love of nature and love of animals. This can also blindside us, because if somebody else claims that they love nature and they love animals, we assume they are a good person. This is not necessarily the case, and anything that blindsides us into thinking that you've got good people and bad people is really not helpful. All of us have the choice. We can act one way or another. Fundamentally, it's our choice. But the idea that some people are immutably good or immutably bad is a sign that someone has been manipulated or is simply a narcissist. Number 8, always looking for answers. This can be an absolute burden, because if we're trying to understand how come someone became some certain way or something like that, we're always looking for answers, and sometimes the answer is actually evidence in front of our eyes. It's because they wanted to. We don't need to understand what happened in the childhood. That doesn't change their choices. Some people can go through the most horrible childhood and they end up being wonderful people. And other people go through something completely innocuous and they end up being absolute monsters. Part of it is a choice. What part? We don't know, but we can respect people's choices. And it's important to not go looking for answers beyond what we see. When we see something, that's all there is. If I see it's raining outside, it's raining outside. I don't need to go looking for answers beyond that. If we want answers, we can be trapped in the game of, let's try to solve the mystery, let's try to solve my problem. That is a recipe for a headache and a very complicated life. Number 9, being a natural truth detector. It's a big issue when people overestimate their ability to detect a liar. I have trained in lie detection, and even people who have trained in lie detection do not always get it right. To overestimate our ability to tell the truth and know when someone is lying is to have a massive blind spot, and narcissists will manipulate you to get right in there in order to gaslight you so you believe them versus the people who are really telling the truth. The best thing you can do is assume that you don't know and just see what is credible and what isn't credible. See if things add up, and if they don't add up, dig. Number 10. People, even strangers, want to tell you their problems. This is a catastrophe. You are not a psychologist. You're not a therapist. Or if you are, invoice for it. That people want to come and offload the dirt onto you. This might be good for your ego, but if you think that this is good for your ego, go and see a therapist. It is not helpful, and I've been there myself so many countless times, thinking it makes me a good person to listen and give time and provide solutions and all of that. It's just a game. If someone is serious about having a toothache, they go and see a dentist. If someone is serious about solving their problems, they go and see a psychotherapist or a coach or some professional. They don't go talking to random strangers. People who go talking to random strangers about their problems are people who want attention, and it's a good idea to stay away from these people. Number 11, unexplained fatigue. Really? After all of these other points, it's unexplained? No. It is perfectly well explained. We have this fatigue because we give away our time, our energy, our attention to a bunch of idiots who come and steal it from us and give us nothing in return. In a healthy relationship and a healthy dynamic, two people give each other energy and their level of energy increases. In an unhealthy dynamic, one person takes and the other one gives, hoping that one day something is going to change and they might get something back, and that day never comes, and therefore they have unexplained fatigue, which is perfectly explained in all of the other points of this picture. And finally, number 12, violence and cruelty on media can be overwhelming. Yes, this ties into feeling other people's emotions, but also to being completely full ourselves. If something that is fiction is affecting us, we have something that hasn't been dealt with. We can believe it makes us a better person to have all of these unaddressed issues, but it doesn't. It simply makes us a ticking time bomb that is easy to manipulate. Something on media is just media. If it upsets us, there's something we need to address inside. It can be helpful to use it to figure out what issues do we have and then go and consult with a therapist. If we're getting upset because of stuff we see on media, we have an issue. I'm not saying there's nothing that's upsetting on there. It's simply our reaction. And if there is anything that we have an issue with, well, why not just go and deal with it with a proper therapist and work through it? The alternative is to carry around this luggage, and that's not a great life. Using these labels can be helpful to identify patterns and understand ourselves better. Remember that some people out there will be trying to take advantage of them.